outside? Should I run and hide? How do I take my company worldwide? Do you love the law? Did you watch Hee-Haw? What's the weirdest thing that you ever saw? What's it like in court? Favorite sport? Can you help with my book report? Is my hair too long? Am I right or wrong? And do you mind if I sing along to anything? Ask Alan anything in the world.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Ask Alan. I'm Alan Crone, CEO of the Crone Law Firm. And today we've got a very interesting guest with us, Seth Price, who's a lawyer, recovering lawyer, and a SEO consultant for law firms and other entrepreneurs. Seth, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Great to be here, Alan.
Seth is, for our listeners, particularly in Memphis, is a fixture nationally and really was at the vanguard of SEO, search engine optimization for law firms. And Seth, how did I understand you used to practice law, or I guess you still do?
Yeah, I still do. I'm still managing partner. So, I'll take you back. If my story goes back, I graduated, it was UPenn GW for law. And then, I came out in a bad job market. So I grabbed a job at a large law firm, stayed there for a couple of years. And I saw this internet bubble, hadn't popped, but it was growing like crazy in New York. So I ran up there and I had my own startup, and I ended up being the founding employee of uslaw.com, which is a precursor to FindLaw and LegalZoom and all of those like websites that now are household names. Then we couldn't convince a lawyer to advertise online, or the idea of legal chat was unheard of, and forums, who wants them on a website? So as adoption got there and bandwidth increased, first the bubble burst, and so we had raised 10 million. I know you have a lot of entrepreneurs watching, and we had 30 million on the table. April of 2000, the bubble burst. By January of 2001, it was gone. So what do you do now? And my buddy from college and law school was one of those lawyers. He had gone back, got his LLM in trial advocacy, loved trying cases. And I was spending my career trying to stay out of the courtroom. He's spending his career trying to stay in the courtroom. So we decided to mix the chocolate and the peanut butter and divide it and conquer it. I would be in charge of marketing and management, and he would be in charge of the chief legal officer, and built a website. We outgrew our first little office in 2 weeks, built another website, add another lawyer, another website, another lawyer. And so, now it's over a decade more, 12, 13 years, we had a family that had capped out at a max about 40 lawyers, whole family of websites. But I said, look, the reason that I built the websites myself and optimized them myself is I didn't see a mousetrap that I liked in the marketplace that did what I needed it to do at scale. And that was when I took my in-house marketing team and launched BluShark Digital, which now services 150 plus law firms around the country. And it's really been, I think, rewarding to see sort of like, hey, these are the pain points of law firms. This is what technology can do, and this is how you bring the two together, not as an academic exercise, but looking at ROI and understanding that one size doesn't fit all. Depends on your market. It depends on a lot of things, whether you're a lawyer or you're doing anything else. And the first question is, which form of digital marketing makes the most sense for you, if any, before you sort of say, hey, I want to invest in this type of marketing?
Yeah, my former law partner now, Miles Mason, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, we went through a similar metamorphosis, and he was the Seth Price of our group, because he really got into the optimization, and it really came out of having bought a website kind of off the rack from a major corporation that was boxed.
That's what my first was a $50 a month website.
Yeah. And
I added every widget, what today might be considered Wix. And I kept adding widgets to the point where, again, it seemed like a lot at the time, but I was spending $500 a month. The guy who owned the company called me up and said, it's time for you to graduate, take your wings and fly, move to WordPress. And it was, it's like anything else, I think now, something when you talk to entrepreneurs, people do what they like to do. If you want to practice law and then build a firm around that allows you to be known as that practitioner and make money. I enjoyed the building and the puzzle that is digital marketing. And that to me was what drove me. So I found a way to sort of, get to do that, not just, from the law firm side, but also from the agency side.
If someone is kind of like me, in the sense that they were real involved in digital marketing, say around 2000, haven't been involved in it, and they're coming back now, kind of Rip Van Winkle style. What's going to be the assumptions that they may have had from the early days that just aren't true anymore?
Well, I'll say the first thing that the hope I have is you kept the domain, because the domain age is worth a lot. I know you changed, but like having a domain, or at least 301 pointing that domain towards a domain, hugely valuable. Time is a very important thing. So what's changed then? If you were lucky enough to be online in the late 90s, early 2000s, everything worked. You just needed a freaking site. You'd be the king of Memphis. So for me, what I would say is it's not just having a site anymore. It's everybody has a site. Do you have content? Not just having content, having high quality content. Needing links, not just having links, getting authoritative links that demonstrate that you are, like, I know who you are from the world we travel in, but Google doesn't know that. So unless you can somehow connect the dots so that when the bot crawls your site, it realizes you're not just some guy with an awesome freaking office that looks like my, what I try to get from my virtual background, but like you're this authoritative guy that people like and trust from around the country. When that happens and you can demonstrate that digitally, that's what you need to do. Back then, if you put words on a page, it would pop. But as competition came, as the Google algorithm became more sophisticated, it's not just about putting words on the page, but demonstrating authority that you are the right answer versus just throwing something up there and knowing that it would work.
What's your philosophy? And I think I know the answer to this question, but between SEO and pay-per-click?
It is a frenetic one. I have an old buddy called me up. I'm doing SEO for years. I think I should abandon that and just do pay-per-click. I have guys who are doing pay-per-click and say, this sucks. I can't get the ROI. So the answer is it depends. It depends on a lot of factors, one of which is your market conditions, your goals, your budget, your time frame, et cetera. I am, biased towards SEO in the sense that with a well-optimized site, you can get ROI that generally far exceeds any other form of digital marketing. Because with search, when there's intent and somebody goes there and you answer their question, one of my mentors talks about being a plumbing company, not a law firm. Hot water in the basement explodes. Your significant other is yelling at you, get it fixed. You need an answer to that solution. In the B2C world, the B2C legal world, it is extremely powerful. Not that search, the paid search isn't, it's a component, but Google's pretty smart and the auction is there, and that the ability to get ROI very often gets truncated 3-to-1 on a good day. Some people, if they're honest with themselves, less than that. Not that there are other benefits and certain amount of stuff is too hard to track, but your ROI gets squeezed. Now, if you're a contingency lawyer and you can get that 5-star case every once in a while that makes everything look great. But outside of that world, when you're outside of the case where you get those home runs that don't exist in the criminal defense or family world, they may be good, you may get doubles, maybe even a triple every once in a while. But when you move into that world, the ROI gets squeezed from paid search. Not that you can't get a return, but it's certainly not as dramatic with time. The problem is if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I need money right away, organic search doesn't work. It's a time. You need the domain to age, you need the links to be indexed, you need content on there. You need to show Google that's there. And other people may be fighting and trying to win those spots as well. So, it is not for everybody in one sense, because you need time. And I have a couple rules that I use as far as not paid search versus organic, but whether or not I will entertain what I call real SEO, content creation and link building. You can do a lot of SEO just optimizing the page itself. If you're not in a competitive space or you're in the B2C space and you just have the right title tags, descriptions, headers, coding your site so the bot comes through properly, that alone can move the needle. So I say that you have to look at, are you in the B2C space first, business to consumer? PI, criminal, family, immigration, trust and estates, plaintiff side employment law. Those areas consumers have search intent, and that can, whether it's paid or whether it's organic, can deliver great results. That said, if you're in the B2B world, I really steer people away from organic search as first dollar spent. Do you have season tickets? Are you a member of the local club? What are the things you're doing to get those business to business relationships formed that don't just pop up? People don't just Google and say, hey, here's my business lawyer. Much of that comes through other tracks. Now, if you're doing everything, if you have a firm and it's well established and you already, have season tickets to all the local sporting and college sports, and you've checked all those boxes, yeah, I think that SEO still could help, but those first dollars looking at ROI, first I say, is it B2C or is it not? Secondly, I go, where are you on that growth? As you I'm sure are aware, I host a video podcast myself with Jay Ruane on growth. And one of the things that we get a lot of people just starting out, and I've created my own version of the digital marketing Mendoza line. If you're a baseball fan, that was the baseball player in the low 200s. And if you were below that number, you shouldn't be in the majors. To me, 350 in gross revenue, assuming that you're not independently wealthy or being funded. But until you hit 350 in gross revenue, playing the long-term SEO game is tough. Not that you shouldn't have a site, not that it shouldn't be aged, not that you may not want to do your own content or build your own links, but the odds of spending that $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 or more to optimize a site, probably too premature in your growth using that one data point. However, once you see people above that, then the question is, where are you? And the next question would be, what is your lifestyle? I get people that come to me and they may have 500,000 in gross revenue doing criminal defense with them and an assistant. Pretty nice practice, pretty nice ROI. Now I say to them, you got to be careful what you ask for, because I know I could make them successful, but let's say hypothetically we take a lowish budget and say $50,000 over the course of a year. Let's say I do my job and we get them to a 3-to-1 ROI in that first year. Not guaranteed. You could do that with paid search as well. The problem that I have is that you've now added that and you have two choices, right? You either kill yourself and you've spent an extra $50,000 to make $150, plus you're going to need some additional staff to get there, even if it's not another lawyer. So in that case, I don't really love it for people. Like, yeah, if you really need that extra $50,000 and you want to kill yourself, maybe. But if somebody comes to me and say, you know what, I really want to grow, I'm going to hire one attorney once I can afford it, and a second one at that point, okay. Now you could say you're at 500,000. We take the 50,000. We put those cases out there. You push your bottom tier cases to somebody. You have more cases, and you can afford. You can reasonably put growth in place. Okay, but I think those are the distinctions about not only where you are, but whether or not whether or not it's the right time for you, and whether or not you wish to grow. Because if you don't wish to grow, adding those marketing dollars just adds additional pressure to the practice. I would like to have it. It's a luxury, and you might be able to cherry pick and take better cases, but you're going to have to pay off that marketing. And unless you have a machine to monetize it, to take yourself not just to 650, but to 750 or 8, then, okay, get an associate. Those numbers make sense to me, and you're not killing yourself. But if you're just going to kill yourself, why do it?
Right. And, it occurs to me that SEO providers like yourself tend to be kind of like NFL quarterbacks. They say that the most popular guy in any city is the backup quarterback on an NFL team. And it seems that lawyers really don't know how to interface with professionals like you, because they kind of expect, well, if I spend this money and I hand it to Seth, then I don't really have to do anything. What is the best way for a lawyer and entrepreneur to approach working with a guy like you?
Well, an amazing question. And it goes to the essence, I think, of what makes you successful or not. In general, when you stroke a check and say, go make this happen, in SEO, it does not work nearly as well, in my experience, as the people that stay engaged in a meaningful way. Because SEO is not voodoo. It's not fairy dust. It's it is demonstrating authority where we are today. Now, if somebody's doing paid search and you're just going to pay them money, but everything you do, even if it's paid, let's take an easier example on paid search. If you stay engaged with your marketing team in-house or out of house, and you say, you know what, I'm getting these cases, but they're pain in the ass and I'm not getting great margin on them, stop marketing for it, move to other things. So the idea that it's a set it and forget it, I paid money, it never works as well. On the organic side, the idea is, and let's take you, Alan, as an example, like the idea is to build authority for who you are. Now, this podcast is a great first step, right? You're on this, you get links back, you're posting this in different directions. All that's great. But the idea is you want your marketing person to be working in sync with you, whether it's getting content, what types of cases do you want, getting the content approved so your voice is on it, making sure that we do, when you're doing great stuff in the community. It sounds like you do a ton outside of law with entrepreneurs and other local dignitaries. The idea is if you could turn the sponsorship that you must have to pay at a bunch of different charity events from a name in the brochure to a link, that to me becomes SEO. And so when you work with them and saying, hey, I was just on this radio show, the guy didn't know anything about links. Can you go clean that up and get me the link juice for it? To me, that's what I want to see. So it's that interactive piece infinitely does better. And the last piece, this is the dirty secret of life. And you know this, if you have a client and let's say you have an associate working on a matter and the client is abusive as crap, the person may be scared, they don't want to mess it up, but they're certainly not going the extra mile because they're in cover their ass mode. But if this is somebody who they enjoy speaking with, first of all, that's good. Second of all, they can give more information, which may end up helping their case as they get to understand who the person is, what their risk factors are, and you get to know them. That's going to drive it. And I wish I could say, hey, we have automaton, that we have these, robots working as our account. We don't. They're human beings. And look, I'm very blessed. We haven't lost an account rep yet. We've had to let clients go because they're too destructive. And I'm like, look, I can lose $100,000 a year. And I've done that before with a single client. That's nothing compared to if I lose one of my best peeps, that's everything. So what I would say is looking at your marketing team as a vendor. You have people, and I've seen this in a bunch of walks of life. If you're in a religious institution, growing up, I remember there were congregants in my synagogue annoyed at how much the rabbi made because they didn't make it. And I was like, that's not the issue. The issue is he serving the community? Is he doing this job that's right? And I feel like here, if somebody sits here, it's not a question of like what somebody is providing to a marketing company. Are you getting ROI? Are you getting value? And if you can demonstrate, and the problem with SEO, and the reason when I came in, people were like, hey, how are you going to break through? There's so much snake oil in this world. How do you break through? One of the great late marketers, guy Stephen Fairley with the Rainmaker Group, I didn't subscribe to his methodologies, but he said to me, look, your mantras, I've done it for myself. Let me do it for you. And I've always thought to myself, hey, whenever you're looking, and this is true for a lawyer, because there are people in my market, my partner, Dave Bennett, is one of the great trial lawyers in our market, but there are people that hit the best of list who are way past their prime. And what I look at it is, if you can find the person who has the goods and work with them, rowing in the same direction with our client. And you know this, when your client is helpful and useful, rather than like send me a bill and gets upset with the bill, the difference is night and day. Get the staff working, get the lawyer working. No different here. It's really our clients that like rave. These are people you get to know that are part of the solution. They aren't just buying, and again, you can buy your way to success, but it's a hell of a lot quicker. And I think exponentially more productive when you're rowing with them. And it is just, when it happens, it's freaking awesome.
That's right. And it is a collaboration. And, when I first got into this, I didn't know what I didn't know. And the more I studied it, the better I was able to work with my partners. I'm like, I don't really like calling them vendors because that, I always think that's like somebody rolling a.
I'm going to get a little personal for a moment. I have that internal issue within BluShark. I have people within our sales team who love the fact they hang out with vendors after a conference. I'm like, that's okay. I want to be looked at as a partner. Again, you need labels. You put, it's like practicing law, not practice, whatever you want to do. I mean, I feel like I jump between these two worlds, but that's it. If you look at it as a vendor, I think a vendor, like from my growing up, was like the ice cream man who sold you a good humor pop. Like that, like it is far from we are giving you a widget, but we are actually, and as SEO develops, almost like your digital PR. That's what a lot of people are calling it now. And that you would never look at your PR agency and say, hey, what'd you get me? It's, hey, I have these ideas. Let's put these out. Let's work together. It's just exponentially more productive.
And you've said the word a couple of times, and I think it's something that really goes past a lot of lawyers particularly, and that is authority. And as you say, I think a lot of lawyers that may have a passing interest in SEO in digital, they really think of it in terms of just message. But what it really is building those online relationships so that the lawyer is seen as an authority, and you can't do that with just an ad that says call me.
Correct. And it's a different beast. And I see that, the LSAs, legal service ads, have been the hot topic recently. But what I've seen, though, is that they're not cutting into the organic. We actually did a case study, and I spoke about it at PubCon, and it got picked up in in some of the influential online SEO blogs. But one of the things that I would say is, the idea that you can demonstrate authority in any sense is obviously great. It's partly why you have the office you have behind you. When somebody sits in there, nobody's leaving to find a more experienced lawyer. You've created that piece. Our art form is creating that digitally. And while a kid in the basement can do a lot of that, Google's job is to sort of say, hey, who's the 26-year-old lawyer in his mom's basement, and who's the guy who's been practicing all these years? And that what we saw as paid got there, outside of the plaintiff's bar, the great cases were not being picked up as much on the paid search. That people with money to spend in the fee-for-service arena, people get that ad at the top. If there's not an organic result, they may go back to it, but people are looking for who is the right answer, not the schmuck who's able to pay for the click at the top. Both can get you ROI, no doubt, and they work together. If you have the paid component, my dream and what I love to get on any given day, paid ad at the top, now maybe an LSA, then you have the map pack, and then you have organic. Then you have a mini relationship with the person as they go. That's not going to happen every day, but that's the dream. So right. When you do those things and they work together, that to me is what gets me out of bed in the morning, is saying, hey, we got a lawyer. These are their assets. Here are their digital assets. Let's make sure we bring those together so that when the Google bot comes through, it's able to see this is Alan in his totality. And this is why we're making our pitch digitally for why you should be highest in the search engines and get the most traffic and visibility.
Seth, who are some of the folks that were your mentors or heroes growing up that kind of helped you get where you are now?
It's interesting. Some of this stuff, when I was a lawyer at the law firm, I realized I didn't want to be a lawyer. I didn't want to be I wanted to be the client. The clients were doing the really cool stuff. So I was lucky to have, lawyers that introduced me to some of these clients, and got to see early on when I was representing, clients during their different strategic build outs and roll-ups of other companies. I get to see these people in action. To me, looking at people, and I think there's a lot of the case, and I love the fact that you deal with the entrepreneur world outside of law, looking outside of law to bring this. And that's one of the things I did when I wanted to get serious about digital. I left the legal world. I was going to conferences. I went to some at, big DUI lawyer named Bubba Head was one of the early guys online, sitting in his living room. I realized it's SEO. I need to learn this. So I went to the Vegas back rooms and met these legendary people. And now I have a second podcast called the SEO Insider, where I get to interview a lot of these people who, like a Rand Fishkin who created Moz, and Mike Ramsey, who has not been on yet, but like these people who I saw speak, 15 years ago, and said, wow, these guys are connecting dots in a way, they get it. I want this. And that's why I continue to sort of bifurcate my life. There's the legal world, the legal marketing world, but there's the taking the best practices that work for everybody else. Because what we do in legal is sort of the top of the digital pyramid in a lot of ways. The clicks are the most expensive. If you can do this, you can do medical, get a lot of plastic surgeons who call us, home improvements. It's the same basic concept. And something I talk about with, friends and mentors in the space, a guy named Jason Hennessy, who's also one of the big digital guys. I talk to him a lot that we walk around with new eyes where everything you see, it's almost, I want to go to like this extreme, but almost like Beautiful Mind. When you see a business, you're like, man, what I could do with this. The guy who ran our tour on an excursion from a cruise ship in Jamaica, who does, and I'm like, man, if we did this and this could be, and you start to see things in different ways. And I think part of it is it's great, but it's a blessing. I don't say a curse, but something I talk about on the podcast with Jay Ruane a lot is you taking those ideas and putting them in quarantine, depending on your personality, anywhere from 72 hours to 6 months. Is this still a good idea? And if it is, going forward with it, but it's a balancing act between not getting distracted by shiny objects while at the same time not missing out on opportunities. And I feel like that is something that as business people and entrepreneurs, we're always struggling between. I want to make sure I'm on to the next big thing. At the same time, I don't want to jump at it just because it's the flavor of the month.
Right. It kind of reminds me of the old carpenters axiom, which is measure twice, cut once. And planning your work and working your plan. And it seems that a lot of people get into SEO or digital without that overall plan of what am I really trying to do here?
Right. And I think that the first thing is, which I talked about, is when a client doesn't make sense, if somebody comes to me and they're like, yeah, we're all B2B real estate. I'm like, look, we can build you a site on our basic package, but we're not going to SEO it until you prove to me you've done everything. Because if something doesn't make business sense, one of my adages, I want to make you better off with me than without me. And if I know that something isn't right, I don't want to sell it, because if I sell it, it's all about relationships and word of mouth. And like, look, not everything works, not everything's perfect, but if I know something's not going to work, that's a bad place. I don't want to be overly confident. If somebody says, I really want to do something, I'll figure out a way to do it. But there are certain things that statistically just aren't the best use of money and aren't going to get you that first ROI. Maybe you do make a few bucks, but if you took that $50,000 and bought season tickets and made sure that you had your assistant fill that box for every game, or joined a golf club and you made sure that you had a foursome you like golf and you get to play every Saturday and you're able to spend, that's going to get you much faster ROI, because the guy you play golf with can be a meaningful widget. Whereas if you're doing something in the consumer space, yes, you could use it for a referral partner, but it's not the same. Your average clients, are not, you can't know one person is that valuable. Not that you don't want to spread it around, but in the B2B space, there's often a list of 20 or 30 people that can make you good money, or maybe it's 100 people, but it's not the entire population, which is also why it's like, some of the stuff that I'm sure that you love. One of the reasons that I love having a diversified portfolio is things like a BNI. There are certain areas of law that the B2C world, that doesn't work. I'm like, stop wasting your time there. Get yourself invested in digital, versus other areas. I'm like, digital's never going to get you there. You better start making those deep relationships and spending time with people, because that's what's going to really develop your business over time.
That's right. And I think one frustration that I've had, and that I would imagine other folks that are in criminal and family law and others, is that everything there's so much money in the personal injury realm, in terms of the cost and the money that the law firms have to spend. Everything you see online or at a conference is aimed at those personal injury guys, which is fine. I get that, because that's the biggest, richest market. But it is tough for someone like me or a family lawyer to figure out what the right cocktail of all this is.
Agree. Look, right cocktail is always tough. And I don't disagree. I actually look at it in two different buckets. And we know that the personal injury space is different, both from a competitive point of view as well as numbers point of view. And we actually, like, part of what we've done is we price based on the competitiveness of a market. And generally, the market sort of supplies this, where as the competitiveness for most non-PI practices is not at the same level as the PI practices. So the good news is you may not have certain multiples, but good and bad. But what's great about it is you can make headway for significantly less, and we charge less. It's not uncommon for a PI lawyer in a major market to pay $15,000 or more. That's not happening outside of that. And for like $3,000 to $6,000 a month, a non-PI lawyer can really do some serious damage. And everything that when I look at it, it's all about how do you create ROI in a reasonable period of time that you don't, cut off the oxygen. You don't want to drain a firm of resources. But the piece that I would say that some of the PI lawyers do get is they run their firms more like a business. They have intake down. And so one of the frustrations of the non-PI shops is sort of the lawyer focused law firm. Not that lawyers aren't dominant in PI shops, but generally for those that make it, somebody has figured out, hey, it is practicing law, but there is a business. And part of it's because of the number of different bells and whistles, non-attorney staff, the cash flow issues, the financing. There are all these things that need to be handled in a contingency shop that are just not in the other shops. So the good news is you don't have those things, but the bad news is we need to work with people that are very often practitioner focused, and that can be frustrating, and that we really want to be able to work with somebody on the business level. When you speak to the entrepreneur friends of yours, they don't like the sausage making or the widget they make may not even matter. Not that it doesn't matter to them, but they are looking up here and they know they need to have an operation that's a given. But there's an entire focus on the running of the business. We had Michael Gerber on our podcast, and he's like, it gets you upset about practicing law, because we actually got into a bit of a back and forth with him, because much of the practice of law can't be e-myth. You can move in that direction, but if you really want to e-myth your business, don't be a lawyer. Like, there are things you can do, but if you e-myth too far, you'll lose your license. And so the idea is, again, LegalZoom, that can be e-mythed, but what you do, it's a balance. And so that has been, I think, one of the struggles and frustrations, especially when you have non-lawyer friends in the business world, that they are able to do stuff that we always can't. But all I would say is we're always striving to do more. I just know that the sausage making that you are doing on a daily basis drains resources that much more is spent by the entrepreneur friends who are able to spend much more of their time on building and growing.
That's right. That's right. Well, let's shift gears just a little bit here. We'll take advantage of your expertise and look forward, look into the future now. What do you think are the new challenges, the new opportunities in the digital space? How are we going to be talking about this in 5 or 10 years?
Great question. If I had all the answers, I buy the options and retire. But right. I think that, look, the local connectivity, reviews came on the scene a while ago. Reviews have become more and more important. I think that the combination, if I had to put money on it, will be the meshing of social with reviews. That's been the direction. The critical mass hasn't been there yet. It's not just, I see this all the time on a TripAdvisor when you go to travel somewhere and you're like, should I stay in this hotel? And let's say it's a really nice hotel. Is the person looking at it, this was their dream vacation, they've never stayed anywhere like this before? Or is this somebody who stays in nice hotels all the time and has a critical eye towards whether or not this particular is the right place? And I think that that's part of it, is that we are trying to get an understanding of what works for whom. And I think that that is the brass ring that, that Google is certainly pushing towards, where they want to be able to sort of figure out what is right for you. From, search is based on your user inputs. If you're signed in, they know about you and a lot about you and show things that are results. And maybe I'll conclude with sort of a story that I saw, which is, this is what they're trying to avoid. I was on my anniversary in New York, and we stayed in a really nice hotel, and the concierge booked us at a super high-end Chinese restaurant. It wasn't like $35 a dish, which for Chinese is a lot. New York, it's actually a cheap meal, but it was higher end for Chinese. We go there and it was freaking awesome, but I almost didn't go because on Yelp, they had like a 3.5 rating. So I'm like, I'm about to spend, several $100s on Chinese food, 3.5 rating. I got there, the general manager, it was a slow night. He came over, he sat at our table for a while and hung out with us. And he's like, yeah, you got to go. In this case, for finer stuff, TripAdvisor makes more sense because that's people who are traveled the world and are trying to figure out what makes the best experience. On Yelp, they got a lot of A-listers. J-Lo was a regular at this place. Others were regular. And it's like, look, the hangers honors came and were upset because it was too expensive for them. And so it's understanding what's right for you. So to me, what I'm always looking at is how can I get touch points that intersect the world that makes sense so that you can get those trust points. And the more that you find those intersections, and some of it's done through video, some of it's done through organic search, all those different touch points, when you bring them together so you can demonstrate this is the right lawyer for somebody, that's what's there. And it's tough because we have all these different levers that we're pulling. But when I look into the future, it's going to be the proof of concept, not just through the links and the content, but what are the additional touch points that Google and others will pull into the mix? Right now, looking forward, we don't see stuff other than Google. But if Facebook were to turn on search, which they've always threatened to do, that could be a really powerful tool. Because Bing didn't really make it, they've never had that connection. But imagine if you went on for search and could tell that your friends had liked and trusted resources. When that combination comes, and I see that once in a while in a Google review, when your friend had actually used it, how much does that sway you over? And I think that's the future.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that's very powerful. Of course, I'm a child of the 80s, and the notion of making a decision, whether it's what hotel to stay in or what lawyer to hire because of a review online, is completely alien to me. I just think people my age, that's not how we make our decisions.
And it's funny, I'm a sort of trendsetter within our age, but to me, that was the joke when I started the firm. My law partner's like, who's ever going to hire a lawyer online? And, he landed a $500,000, probably with a co-counsel, $1 million case the other day, just 2 days, not contingency, regular, meaning it is happening more and more. And it's not every day. There are a gazillion lawyers in our city of DC that don't have a single, case being garnered through digital. It's all relationships, but we'll take that slice of the market, and it's gotten bigger from a day when we couldn't convince a lawyer to be in a legal directory to a day when people are clamoring to be in there. I think it's part of the mosaic, and, ignore it at your peril at this point.
Yeah. Oh, I'm a believer now, absolute believer in it, both for the Google advantages, but also people want to have that connection to what they're going to buy. And in lieu of what you're talking about, which is the cross-pollination with their friends on Facebook, if they see a review from somebody that they identify with, I think it makes a tremendous
absolutely
impact. Well, Seth, I really appreciate it. I could go on for a long time, but I don't want to take up your time. I appreciate it. It's been fascinating. And thank you for being on the podcast. I
appreciate it. Hopefully I get to see you in person. We get some corkies sometime real soon.
Sounds good to me. I'll look forward to shaking your hand at hopefully at a conference not too in the distant future.
Look forward to it. Thank you, Alan.
All right, everybody. Thank you for watching this episode of Ask Alan. If you've enjoyed it, and of course you enjoyed it, it was a great interview. Please share us, like us on social media, email this if you received it by email, and send me an email if you'd like to nominate a future guest or you have a question that you'd like me to answer. Again, thank you very much, and I'm going to go out and get some justice.